Welcome everyone. I'm Jidesh Vital, Program Director for Data Science and Technology Initiatives at MDIC, which includes Cybersecurity Program. I'm super excited with this opportunity to present this session focusing on healthcare cybersecurity. Those who are listening, if you are new to MDIC, we are a non-profit public-private partnership solely focusing to advance the regulatory science for translating innovation to the benefit of patients, working in the pre-competitive spectrum with industry, government, academia, healthcare delivery organization, as well as other non-profits. Today, we have an awesome panel. All of them work very closely with the MDIC and advise us and help us to advance our cybersecurity efforts. Let me introduce the panelists. We have Greg Garcia, who is Executive Director, Cybersecurity for Health Sector Coordinating Council, HSCC. Ken Hoyme, who is the Senior Fellow, Global Products Cybersecurity, Global Technology Services at Boston Scientific. Dr. Suzanne Schwartz, she's the Director of Office of Strategic Partnerships and Technology Innovation, OST, at CDRH at US FDA. Rob Suarez, who is the Vice President, Chief Information Security Officer at BD, and Chris Tyberg, who is the Division Vice President, Product Security at Abbott. The format of our session today is first we will hear updates from Dr. Suzanne Schwartz from FDA, and then we will hear from HSCC from Greg Garcia on some of the complementary efforts being undertaken at HSCC. Then Rob Suarez and Chris Tyberg will provide an overview and update on the MDIC's MedTech Cybersecurity Benchmarking Initiative, followed by Ken Hoyme, who will talk about the pen testing and validation workgroup efforts at MDIC. After the initial remarks from each of the panelists, I will have a few questions for panelists to share their perspectives. With that, let me turn it over to Suzanne Schwartz. Suzanne.
Hi, thank you, Jitesh. It's really a pleasure to be here and to participate with my wonderful colleagues on this panel. So I'm here to provide an update on behalf of FDA with respect to all the work that's being done in the cybersecurity sphere of medical devices. I'd like to kind of take a step back, and it's worth thinking about this really in different dimensions. That is the work that is very externally facing that we do in collaboration with our partners, as well as the work that FDA is undertaking internally in terms of further advancing and strengthening our capabilities in medical device cybersecurity so that we are well poised to address challenges that we encounter within the healthcare ecosystem. Granted, these are somewhat overlapping or concentric circles, and much of the work that we do has been with collaboration across so many members of the ecosystem. I think a good place for us to really start, though, is to be grounded in one very important document that was published back in 2017, and that was a congressionally mandated study, a landscape analysis of the state of cybersecurity within the healthcare and public health sector. And included within that document, within that study, was an evaluation of areas that certainly require or provide opportunities for attention within medical devices, as well as recognizing how there is so much in the way of connectivity and system-wide consideration that needs to be given within healthcare as we look to address some of the gaps and the vulnerabilities within healthcare. So that's one important document that in so many ways has provided a clear roadmap for furthering to strengthen, for furthering to advance cybersecurity. And this has largely been undertaken through the work of the Healthcare Sector Coordinating Council, the creation of different task groups in which FDA has participated over the past several years, including work that's being done presently on a software bill of materials, work that's being done on legacy technology and how to really undertake some of the challenges that we see in legacy technologies so that it doesn't continue to perpetuate over generation and generation of medical devices. Work that is also happening now, and we'll hear about this further during the panel, on benchmarking, a benchmarking initiative that is convened by MDIC, working with the Healthcare Sector Coordinating Council to really ascertain what the maturation level is within the industry and across the sector in terms of medical device cybersecurity. And this particular effort really is based upon, it's grounded in the Joint Security Plan, a plan that was also issued back in 2018 as a result of a collaborative effort between manufacturers of medical devices, healthcare delivery organizations, and the FDA working closely together. FDA is continuing also to advance this work on a global scale as well through the International Medical Device Regulators Forum, the IMDRF. And we had, together with our global regulator partners, as well as with industry partners, released an initial foundational guidance back in March of 2020, upon which we're now taking a deeper dive. We are exploring further what is intended by software bill of materials. How is it to be implemented? Similarly, we're also working on further operationalizing the concept behind the legacy technology framework that we had put out within the IMDRF. What's really excellent about these efforts is that there is a clear emphasis and intent towards convergence and alignment as to the work that's being done within the United States through the efforts that take place in the public-private partnership through the Healthcare Sector Coordinating Council and the U.S. government, as well as these efforts that would have a much broader sphere of influence through the International Medical Device Regulators Forum. I want to also take a moment to ground the work that we're doing in a second important document, which was specific to FDA, and that is the Medical Device Safety Action Plan that FDA released in the spring of 2018. And within that document, we specifically called out the importance, the imperative of medical device cybersecurity. We underscored how there is no way that we can really move forward as a sector, as an entire ecosystem, unless we work collaboratively. And there's been such extraordinary work that has been done in progressing the area of cybersecurity of medical devices. At the same time, there's work that FDA recognizes that we need to undertake ourselves and internally. And one of the areas that was specifically identified within that safety action plan was the importance of iterating on the pre-market guidance for medical device cybersecurity. As many of you know, we issued a draft pre-market cybersecurity guidance in 2018, held a public workshop in 2019, and received a significant amount of really insightful comments to that draft guidance. We are presently getting ready to be releasing in 2021 a new draft pre-market guidance on cybersecurity, one that really takes into account all of the important feedback that has been provided from stakeholders, and one that really measures up to the time in which we're living in terms of structurally thinking about cybersecurity from a secure software development lifecycle approach. So the pre-market cybersecurity guidance is one to look forward to in terms of its release. It will be released again as draft in 2021, and will therefore offer the opportunity for further comment from all of our stakeholders. Before I conclude, I think it's important to take a moment to also really take notice as far as what we as an entire community have observed and have experienced over the past year, in particular during the pandemic, and how that has really raised the necessity for thinking about cybersecurity across the entire ecosystem as an imperative, as we have been witness to, encountered many case after case of ransomware attacks, of cyber campaigns, those that have occurred within the healthcare ecosystem, affecting the capabilities of hospitals and facilities to render care, as well as even outside of our sector, and how they've affected other sectors of critical infrastructure. If anything, what this does call to our attention at FDA as well is the importance of thinking about medical devices, of course, not merely as standalone boxes. And that's something that parenthetically we made a point of saying back at our very first public workshop in 2014, given how much more connectivity that we do see with medical devices. But even going beyond the connectivity to each other, to other systems, to hospital systems, we really need to be thinking about the medical devices in its broadest, more holistic context, where individuals may be utilizing devices at home, walking around, embedded within or implanted within them. The need for cybersecurity of medical devices extends well beyond the brick and mortar facility. Thinking about this with our partners across the entire ecosystem becomes very, very important. And with that, I'm going to now turn over the presentation to Greg Garcia, who will take it from here. Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne. That's a great introduction, and I want to thank MDIC for inviting me here. MDIC is a member of the Health Sector Coordinating Council, and we are partnering closely on this benchmarking project, which you're going to hear more about in a few minutes. Let me just start with the broad description of the Health Sector Coordinating Council, what it is we do, and that will help set the context for what the medical device security issue is, how we're managing that, and how this benchmarking project is going to move the ball forward for us. And while I'm talking about it, I want to have you keep in your mind a couple of phrases that Suzanne used at the beginning, which was concentric circles, which is really a way to describe this industry collaboration of the Sector Coordinating Council, and system-wide solutions. And again, system-wide being that we are an interdependent, interconnected ecosystem that really depends, all the subsectors of the health sector depend on each other for maintaining and improving the security, the cybersecurity of this complex infrastructure. So to start off with, at the base, the Health Sector Coordinating Council is one part of the nation's critical infrastructure. When we think about critical infrastructure, we think about all of those systems and assets that the public depends upon for our homeland security, economic security, public health, and safety. That includes healthcare, it includes financial services, telecommunications, electricity, oil and gas, water, transportation. You get the idea, everything that this public depends upon. The Health Sector Coordinating, and therefore there is a Sector Coordinating Council for every one of these critical industry sectors. And a Sector Coordinating Council generically serves as an advisory committee, a critical infrastructure advisory committee to the government, and in fact with the government. They are a joint public-private collaboration with the understanding that particularly an issue like cybersecurity. Cybersecurity, there is no one answer. There is no one fault, or there is no one responsibility. It is complex, and there is a limit to either how much regulation can do to improve cybersecurity, or how much strictly market forces can do to improve cybersecurity. So we need to have this interchange between industry and government. So the Health Sector Coordinating Council is concerned with all of those critical infrastructure issues, we call them physical security issues, such as pandemic planning or flooding from hurricanes, wildfires, earthquakes. But we're also concerned about some of those man-made threats. That includes terrorism and active shooters, and yes, cybersecurity. So my role in the Sector Coordinating Council is as the executive director of the Cybersecurity Working Group. The Cybersecurity Working Group consists of now more than 300 organizations from across the various healthcare subsectors, whether it's medical device security, medical device companies, labs, blood, pharma, health IT, plans and payers, and of course direct patient care and public health. So these all work together in concert with each other and with the government to identify and mitigate those systemic threats. Again, systemic threats that Suzanne was referring to. Systemic threats for cybersecurity that affect two or more of our various subsectors. And to do this, when we identify them and mitigate them, then the mitigation part is really where the rubber meets the road. So the Health Sector Coordinating Council, the Cybersecurity Working Group, is organized now into a dozen different task groups that are focusing on some very specific cybersecurity functions that affect the healthcare sector systemically, whether it's issues like, of course, medical device security, what we're talking about today, but also workforce development. How do we get better cybersecurity talent into our workforce? What about information sharing? We really need to do better at sharing threat, vulnerability, and incident response information so that we are collectively better prepared. What about supply chain security? How do we know that our service providers or our third tier, fourth tier service providers or vendors are doing the right thing in cybersecurity? So there's a whole range of issues that we've been tackling through these task groups, which are made up of the members. It's by the sector and for the sector, where they come together under the leadership of 2 or 3 different subsector representatives. We've got a couple of task group leaders to follow me, Rob Suarez and Chris Tyberg. And of course, we have FDA and Health and Human Services as some of our co-chairs of what we're doing. So we really are bringing these different perspectives to the table, understanding that there are different business models, there are different equities at stake, different authorities and different responsibilities, that the only way we're going to collectively get better is if we bring to the table all of those stakeholders who have influence into the marketplace and also are affected by decisions that we make. So these task groups have, over the past 3 years, since we reorganized the Cybersecurity Working Group, we've published now, I think, 11 or 12 best practices, guidance documents, recommendations, again, by the sector, for the sector, with substantial help from FDA, from HHS, and from the Department of Homeland Security. Actually, the Department of Homeland Security oversees all of the Sector Coordinating Council activities as part of the public-private partnership. So these task groups, having published these recommendations, they are freely available to the public. We encourage all stakeholders within the healthcare system to adopt and, as much as possible, implement these recommendations. They are found on the website at healthsectorcouncil.org under the recommendations tab. And it's particularly important for us as the Sector Coordinating Council to ensure that the smaller to mid-sized organizations in particular are able to adopt and implement these best practices, because they tend to be the ones that have less expertise, less resources. And what we're really trying to do is have the rising tide lift all boats, so that we can collectively and systemically have a greater cybersecurity posture. Now, the subject of today's webinar is about medical device security. We have had, as Suzanne mentioned, the Joint Security Plan. now in the process of being implemented across the sector. In addition to the Joint Security Plan, which you'll hear more about, it basically sets baseline standards, best practices for designing and developing and manufacturing security into medical devices. We're also taking deeper dives into elements of that, such as how do we better manage medical devices, installed medical devices in the clinical environment as they age, as they become legacy devices. And how do we share that responsibility between medical device manufacturers and the hospital systems that are deploying these systems? How do we better manage communications of vulnerabilities to the various stakeholders, whether device manufacturers have to inform FDA or hospital systems or the patient or the press about a certain vulnerability that may exist in a given device and what they need to do about it. So we're looking at best practices and standards for that. And finally, model contract language. Every time a hospital system needs to buy a large fleet of medical devices or some big iron imaging device, a contract needs to be negotiated about all the various terms and conditions, including cybersecurity. So we are getting the two primary stakeholders together, the medical device manufacturers and the big hospital systems, to work out what would be really the 80% of the most commonly used cybersecurity terms and conditions in a contract. And let's see if we can use that as a template across the sector. So both the legacy device and the model contract task groups are nearing conclusion of their work now, both about a year and a half in the process. So we believe that by attacking these problems as concentric circles, as a systemic solution, we are going to find those common points of responsibility, of shared responsibility, where we can actually drive better security and hopefully not just keep up with, but stay ahead of the adversaries. Because it's constantly evolving. Technology is constantly evolving, as is the threat. So we need to be on top of this. And the benchmarking project is one way for us to really get a handle on how is the Joint Security Plan doing in terms of penetration, adoption, and implementation, and hopefully ultimately improvement in the security of devices. So that's what this is about today. So I want to hand it off now to Rob Suarez of BD, who has certainly been one of the shining lights in the Sector Coordinating Council in terms of bringing those different perspectives to the table to ensure that we really take into account all the complexities of medical device security. So I'll end here and hand it off to Rob and take it away.
Well, Greg, thank you for that warm introduction, and what an honor to follow you in this panel. Just amazing collaboration work happening across the healthcare sector coordinating council and bringing together so many different types of stakeholders across the healthcare industry. And so, hi everyone, my name is Rob Suarez, as Greg mentioned, and Jitesh mentioned earlier as well. My role is CISO, Chief Information Security Officer for BD. And I'm also the chair of the MDIC Cybersecurity Working Group. BD is a leading medical technology company. We offer a wide variety of solutions across the continuum of care, from diagnostics to the delivery of medication. And with that, we offer software-based solutions, technologies that need to address cybersecurity to support our healthcare providers and their patients. And so it's my responsibility to make sure our medical technology in the supply chain and in its deployed environments at hospitals and at patient bedsides are secure, that they're resilient in a really rapidly changing landscape when it comes to cybersecurity. And for all of you, as professionals in the healthcare industry, we share this goal of protecting patient safety and privacy while also, increasing the resilience of healthcare and continuously improving our maturity in healthcare. And so if you go to the next slide, on that topic, through our partnership with MDIC and the Healthcare Sector Coordinating Council and many medical device manufacturers, the FDA and industry stakeholders, we're looking to pursue and establish an industry benchmark intended to help medical device manufacturers, organizations assess their current state of cybersecurity maturity and define what is next in their own improvement plans, relative to their industry peers. Whether you're a large or small medical device manufacturer, together, we can actually produce results even quicker. And so, the delivery mechanism for this benchmark will be through a very simple, secure, and anonymous web-based survey tool, and engaging and really soliciting the participation of medical device manufacturers. Again, as I mentioned, if you're small or if you're mid-size or large, it doesn't matter. The benchmark and the tool that you'll be interfacing with is readily available and it will be easy to interface with, and so that we can aggregate and establish that benchmark. But also, I want to mention, if you could go to the next slide, in order to help us, collectively achieve these goals, it really is time to establish a benchmark for medical technology. And the end goal is not only for medical device manufacturers to interact and better understand benchmarking when it comes to cybersecurity, and take that home with them and compare it across their portfolio of products, but also really to provide that degree of reassurance and information to healthcare providers, to the technicians and the individuals out in the field actually that manage medical and interface with medical technology and implement it on a routine basis. And so we've got a good group of individuals here representing medical device manufacturers. And then also we're very fortunate enough to have support from the FDA as well, and the Healthcare Sector Coordinating Council, and MDIC has partnered with Booz Allen Hamilton to again develop the benchmarking processes and tools and mechanism we'll be using to establish the benchmark. If you go to the next slide, please. Last but certainly not least, I would just want to mention that the map exists today for improving medical device cybersecurity. That map is the Joint Security Plan, the MedTech Joint Security Plan, which was again developed through the Healthcare Sector Coordinating Council, and some tremendous collaboration across the healthcare industry, from medical device manufacturers to healthcare providers. And so we're not starting from zero, and it's important to establish this type of structure and really governance and risk management and design control and understanding of the capabilities needed for a medical device manufacturer to really support cybersecurity for the solutions we provide to our customers. And so with that, I will turn it over to Chris Tiber to talk about really what's the future ahead with benchmarking and cybersecurity. Chris?
Thanks much, Rob. And so with that, I want to spend a little bit of time talking about what benefit or why would someone or a company want to participate in the benchmark. And I think there's really two key reasons. First of all, for you as an individual or a company, we're all doing a lot of work on improving our cybersecurity programs. And I don't know about you, but I can't count how many times in my career I've gone in to make a proposal or presentation on some enhancement or improvement and been asked the question, what are others in the industry doing? And unfortunately, there aren't great benchmarks today, unlike in other areas like enterprise security around medical device security. So with respect to that, this benchmark is really going to be groundbreaking to help establish that first iteration, that first view on maturity across the industry. And then second of all, there's also a benefit to the industry as a whole, and helping us identify areas where we may need to collaborate more. You may have heard about the great work that's been done in the last year with MDSE, FDA, and several manufacturers around building a threat modeling training program. A lot of the drive for that came from the acknowledgement that there was a gap in the industry related to that skill set and that training. And so those organizations came together to help build that training and make it available to across the industry. So what's next? I think the benchmark is really going to help us identify that. So you can go to the next slide. So where are we right now with this effort? As was mentioned, MDIC has partnered with Booz Allen on this to develop an anonymous benchmarking survey. And common question that we get is it anonymous? Will my results be visible to others? And I can say no. We've spent a lot of time on that. That's one of the areas of expertise that Booz Allen brings, along with the advice from the advisory committee, to make sure that it truly is an anonymous survey. But by participating in it, what you will get is you'll get your results compared to the aggregate results of the industry, to be able to see where you stand and where you stack up against others in the industry. And of course, we'll be able to see where the industry as a whole is at, to be able to identify those common areas of opportunity. So we're in the process of developing the survey. The advisory committee is working on that, building the survey. We're going to do a soft launch here in the next few weeks, and then after that, we're gonna do the full launch. And as part of that, Booz Allen will be available to have answer questions, host office hours for manufacturers that have questions and need additional assistance. Another question that I wanted to address that we get quite often is do you have to have implemented JSP to participate? A lot of discussion about the Joint Security Plan so far, and it's a great framework. It's very valuable, but you don't have to have implemented it out of the box and have it fully implemented to participate in the survey. A lot of the concepts that you'll see in the survey are similar across multiple frameworks, as well as in JSP. So we feel that anybody that wants to participate, and really we would encourage anybody that wants to participate, will be able to participate regardless of whether they use JSP or not. So let's go to the next slide and talk about what's next. Well, obviously the big thing here is we want organizations to get signed up to participate. If you haven't signed up, we'd encourage you to do so. All you have to do to get involved is send an email to cybersecurity@mdic.org. And if you have signed up, great. But we'd also encourage you to encourage others in the industry to participate. The value in this benchmarking is going to really be in having as many people participate as possible, and also having a lot of diversity in those participants. So we want organizations large and small to participate, and different types of products and the range of companies that are in the medical device and medical technology area, to really make this survey and this benchmark valuable. So once again, can't emphasize it enough. Encourage people to get involved, sign up, send an email to cybersecurity@mdic.org. With that, I would like to turn it over to Mr. Ken Hoyme from Boston Scientific.
Thank you, Chris. So I'm going to speak briefly about another initiative that we've been working on related to penetration testing. And this really came about because as penetration testing is really best practices, and I believe referenced in the draft pre-market guidance, we obviously, like other manufacturers, have been rolling out pen testing programs. And within our quality system group, we ended up getting a a question about how did it fit, and in particular, given that the tools used for our own device and software validation are validated, do all the tools that the pen tester needs to use need to be validated? So I reached out to some of my peers and kind of floated that question, and only to discover other companies were having the same questions being asked. So brought it to the steering committee, and in the classic no good deed goes unpunished. And then I got the opportunity to form a group. So we have a group of about 5 manufacturers, and then Matt Hazlett from the FDA. So it's really a critical partnership within MDIC to have the ability to have these discussions and include the FDA input to make sure that we're consistent with the policy directions of where the FDA goes. So we are currently working on a white paper kind of on the role of pen testing in software device verification validation, and in particular addressing what we believe we have a consensus is that the tools used by a pen tester are not needing to be validated. That is kind of the direction that we think it should go, as we shouldn't constrain a pen tester in ways that a real attacker would not be. We're looking at potentially a second white paper on penetration testing best practices. We've talked about whether we should have a guide to how to know if an external pen tester knows their stuff. So small manufacturers, if they are now having to reach out externally to hire a pen tester, can not get the snake oil salesmen that are out there fooling them into thinking they're getting a good test. So those are the areas that we've been looking to work on, and still are open. I think we'll maybe discuss a little bit later during the Q&A about how to get more involved. So with that, I think I'll turn it back to Jitesh, and we'll get into our panel discussion.
Thank you, Ken, and thanks to all the speakers. In the last few minutes itself, we clearly saw the need for collaboration across the sectors and involving as many as different stakeholders possible. And now I wanted to, get some perspective from the panel members on few questions here. And speaking of cybersecurity and cybersecurity attacks in mainstream media, fresh in mind is the Colonial Pipeline cyber attack. And I'm pretty sure we can have some lessons to be learned from these kind of events or attacks. So if you could shed some light on it, Rob, I will let you to comment, then followed with Suzanne and Greg. Rob.
Sure, Jitesh, this is certainly a hot topic, even for people who are not familiar with cybersecurity and how a hacking organization has impacted the supply of fuel and really disrupted that supply chain. When looking at the situation with Colonial Pipeline, I certainly see a lot of parallels and takeaways for the healthcare industry. Replace gasoline with medical technology. And as medical device manufacturers, we're integral to the supply chain of healthcare itself. Forget about technology, of healthcare itself. And that means, the scope of what we have to protect is so far-reaching. It can be from, not just the software and solutions that we deliver to a customer at a hospital, but also our manufacturing capability, our distribution centers, as those are really central hubs to, again, delivering at the end of everything that we do, which is clinical value to patients. And so it's certainly that a very unfortunate situation puts into perspective, I think the very important areas of cybersecurity that we must focus on as an industry, again, to prevent similar events. And in fact, we've seen how ransomware can have an impact on healthcare delivery organizations across the world as well.
Thanks, Rob. Suzanne?
Yeah, I don't know that I have much more to add over what Rob mentioned. I thought, Rob, you really kind of nailed it in terms of the importance of thinking about supply chain security, which is something that Greg mentioned up at the top as well during his opening remarks. And we've certainly seen, even throughout the pandemic, how reliance on particular raw materials, when they become less available or unavailable, what the cascading consequences are of that, what the ripple effects are on so many different parts of different sectors, and that is an appropriate kind of analogy, as you've said, to what we can experience and have begun to experience with respect to healthcare and cyber attacks as well. And the fact that it touches individuals who may not have any concept at all of cybersecurity or hacking, but it touches one's day-to-day life, is something that I think makes all of us kind of sit up and really take notice, and serves as an important lesson as to why security within critical infrastructure becomes so important, even while it is, again, a private sector or part of the industry that was impacted. What that long-term ramifications can be that crosses over in terms of affecting so many people's lives.
Thanks, Suzanne. Greg, do you want to jump in?
More than 10 years ago, I was with the Department of Homeland Security, and part of my responsibility was developing, in concert with the private sector, a national cybersecurity strategy, particularly for critical infrastructure. And one thing you learn there, and I myself am not a cybersecurity practitioner, more on the policy side, but any good cybersecurity professional has to have some element of healthy paranoia in their way of thinking, and that is to imagine what could happen if this service were not available. If that asset had been shut off or corrupted, what would be the impact? And you have to think about this not just in the silo of a single infrastructure or a single system or a single product or software, but in how that's all interconnected across sectors. And so the Colonial Pipeline ransomware certainly brings that to home, that for every part of your infrastructure that is connected in some way to the internet, to a network, wirelessly to other devices, then you need to be thinking about contingency plans. Well, first you need to be thinking about if that were unavailable, what would happen, and how do I ensure that it remains available? But if it doesn't, then what is the backup plan? And so I think that's always the lesson here, and we proved this in long ago during my tenure at DHS when we staged a mock cyber attack on a regional electric generator, and we determined that that was easily done. Not that it would cause a blackout, but that would cause, a brownout in the immediate area. And you certainly can't go down to Walmart or Home Depot and replace a 6-ton generator from off-the-shelf components. So I think pipeline ransomware really taught us or reinforced for us that we need to continually be a little bit paranoid and put in place the kinds of security controls and contingency planning to ensure that we have the least disruption possible.
Ken?
So this is we didn't coordinate this, and being last as always, because Greg just took the exact point that I was going to be making, which was about availability and the separation of what's considered operational versus IT. And what we saw here was non-safety critical components causing the shutdown of something. And so I think as we go forward, we need to be thinking about, and in the particular risk is as we go toward more cloud-based services, more things we have to think about. If the internet has a denial of service and something is down, are the main issues that are critical to patient safety able to be done locally without those kinds of connections? And so that's a constant reminder that if we intermix our IT systems and our critical safety, patient safety related equipment, we need to always be thinking about those issues.
Thanks, Ken. And speaking of cybersecurity in news, I mean, of course, we all agree that no one single response or no one policy or government initiative or even one technology can prevent a next colonial pipe attack or next attack. But we do know that President Biden has signed an executive order to improve nation's cybersecurity, and you guys represent either industry or FDA or other sectors, so you may have some perspective. So I'll let Suzanne to start share her thoughts on the EO.
Yeah, I think that the EO that was just released really puts a fine point. It really accentuates the criticality of cybersecurity today, regardless of the industry, of the sector that's impacted. And seeing the components of this executive order, I'll call out specifically one of them in terms of software transparency and the importance of being able to provide information from the manufacturer, the developer, to whoever to the consumer. In this case, it's government, of the components, the software components within the product, within the device, is a important mitigation, is an important measure that can be taken as far as then being able to best protect one's assets. There are other components of the executive order which are equally as important, but I just really wanted to highlight that one specifically because it very much aligns with FDA's views on software transparency and medical devices, SBOM, and the work that's being done in partnership with the Healthcare Sector Coordinating Council, as well as with NTIA and Department of Commerce and within the IMDRF.
Thanks, Suzanne. Chris?
Yeah, I mean, I think to kind of add on to Suzanne's comments, I was encouraged when I saw it, even almost a little proud, because when you look at it and you read through it, whether it's software bill of materials or the transparency and communication aspects or testing, there wasn't much in there that the healthcare industry hasn't been working on for the last few years. I think thanks to the work of HSCC, FDA, other groups like the NTIA, who's been working on software bill of materials and working at it from a kind of whole industry perspective, including manufacturers, regulators, healthcare delivery organizations. There's areas where, and I think software bill of materials is one of them, where I think compared to other industries, healthcare is actually ahead. I think healthcare many times gets a bad rap for being behind in this space, but I think thanks to all of these efforts, there's areas where we're ahead, and we've definitely have a good foundation in these organizations and groups that have been established to continue to make progress. Not to get arrogant by any stretch, there's still a lot of work to do, and I think we have to keep the hard work going, and we have to keep building upon what's already been developed. But I think it hit on a lot of the key points that we've been working on for a while.
Well, and I would just add, Chris, that this benchmarking project, I think, is going to be telling for the Biden administration, because the Joint Security Plan really is, I think, it is what you were referring to in terms of we are trying to get ahead of this threat. And one component of the executive order, which is Section 4, I believe, is requiring that all government agencies buying any kind of software, and this is related to the software bill of materials, can attest to certain levels of software security built into the device. that adhere to some software security development life cycle. And that is going to extend to medical device manufacturers, to those device manufacturers who are selling into agencies such as the VA and the Defense Health Agency and NIH and others that are using these medical diagnostic equipment. We are going to have to attest to some level of software security in the products that we are selling them. While most of the executive order is about how the government itself is going to improve its own cybersecurity, as soon as it starts to use its procurement power to help influence the marketplace, the commercial marketplace, we're going to have to be ready for that. I mean, the proof is going to, the details are, the devil's in the details of how the implementing regulations are going to be written and what the specific requirements are. But I think the JSP is giving us a head start on that. And that's why it's critically important that medical device companies, large and small, if not using the JSP, are using some kind of systematic cybersecurity process, design and development process, in order to be able to give not just the government agencies that level of assurance, but also, of course, the rest of the healthcare community.
Ken?
So I think there's still yet more coming. While the executive order came out shortly after Colonial Pipeline, it looks to me like this was being prepared post SolarWinds and understanding supply chain. And so I think there's still needed thoughts, and I read earlier today that there's going to be some specific regulation coming out associated with pipeline security. But I think for the critical infrastructure, again, this operational technology, the physical, cyber physical systems, and the IoT world, I think the EO is necessary, but there's still stuff to be done.
Rob?
Well, I think Ken's last remark there was certainly rings true. There's always things to be done in the world of cybersecurity. But I will tell you this, I think the executive order was very important to really reaffirm to the critical infrastructure sector, in particular, in light of the Colonial Pipeline situation, the importance of cybersecurity. And it's been a long time talking about cybersecurity across critical infrastructure. Healthcare, it bears repeating, healthcare is critical infrastructure. And while, obviously there's a lot of details that are, remaining to be worked on, I think the approach through the National Institute of Standards and Technology, the working groups, and again, the community effort to establish what practical, standards we're going to establish. It's a race against the clock right now from a scheduling standpoint, but it's a worthwhile race actually, because even if we don't get 100% there, we have the momentum and starting to build that community of practice across the critical infrastructure. And the other thing I think that really just resonates me in this conversation is the importance of information sharing. Our adversaries, the cyber criminals, the nation state sponsored threat actors, you name it, they are sharing information openly, freely, very quickly. By the way, much quicker than we do as the defenders of critical infrastructure. And so I just think it's my own theory that in order to really match the pace of the emerging threats, I think we need to adopt a similar, more streamlined mechanism for reporting these types of things. And by the way, also destigmatizing these types of things, that those things being cyber attacks, those things being vulnerabilities and threats that we see in our environment.
So there's a crime ISAC.
Thanks, Ken.
And a criminal sector coordinated council.
Greg, let's work on that.
Yeah, a new business model for me.
So one theme which is, when we are discussing about this is coming up is, we need more and more collaboration, more and more transparency. And I know we are running short on time. So, Greg, I just want you to have an opportunity to highlight or explain how somebody can get involved in HSCC.
Sure, very, very quickly. The Sector Coordinating Council is open, free of charge. We cannot charge dues as we are a federal advisory committee. It is open to those organizations that are either, and this is in our charter, you are either a covered entity or a business associate under HIPAA. You are regulated by FDA. You are a public health organization, or you are an industry group or professional society representing any of the above. We have in our membership a number of advisors, non-voting advisors who are consultants, law firms, security companies, et cetera, who are helping out pro bono. But it's important for you to be involved. This is a coalition of the willing. It is, I like to say, without being too presumptuous, your responsibility. We are critical infrastructure. And as critical infrastructure, we are providing a public service. In this public service, we are all, to some extent, public servants, whether or not we are for-profit or not-for-profit. You ought to participate. Go to go to healthsectorcouncil.org, and you can put in a query there, and we will respond and get you onboarded if you qualify.
Okay, thanks, Greg. And I also want to insert here that MDIC, even though it's a membership-based organization, we have membership categories, and based on the revenue, and some organizations, they do not pay anything, some pay really low. But over and beyond that, all the resources developed by MDIC are freely available for the community, to the public. And many of the work streams and work groups are open to non-members as well. For example, the benchmarking effort is open. MDIC non-members can participate. And I have a follow-up question to Chris for this. Chris, you mentioned that this is benchmarking initiative is fully anonymous, but in the advisory group, we have FDA participating and other competing companies participating. Can you just reiterate the fact whether there is any regulatory punitive implications by participating in the benchmarking?
Yeah, well, I'm not a regulator. Maybe Suzanne could jump in too, but I think I know what her response is that no. I think we want people to participate. Again, like a lot of work has been spent, and that's where Booz Allen has come in to really help make sure it's anonymous and that the information at an aggregate level helps us as an industry, but at an individual company level will help you as a company improve your maturity, develop your plans to get better, because that's really what's in our best interest.
Perfect. Thank you. I think we are close to that. The 1 hour mark, and I really, of course, these discussion can go on and on, and we know the breadth and depth of the topics here in cybersecurity right now. And I'm happy that all these collaborations are making the cybersecurity as a front end and to the front end center, not like an afterthought, right? So I'm hoping to see more efforts, and I would like to thank all the panelists for their time, for the perspectives. Thank you all. Thank you for watching.
Thank you.
For inviting us.
Thank you.